Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the TLDR podcast. Today we are lucky enough to have Jacob Cheah on the show with myself and Luke. Jacob is a friend of mine for a very long time, but also owns a gym over here in WA called Flow Performance that has grown to full capacity, I'm pretty sure, within about 3 years, which is epic. Looking to potentially grow from there, but also does online coaching and is my coach for my half marathon, which when this is released is only 6 days away. So Jacob, thanks for jumping on and welcome.
Thanks for having me.
All good, dude. Maybe give the listeners and maybe Luke, because Luke doesn't really know you as well as I do, a bit of a background as to kind of your fitness journey. Or it doesn't even have to just be fitness, but kind of a bit about who you are, and then I guess, you know, the creation of Flow, your gym. We can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, cool. Easy. So my name's Jacob Cheah. Half Chinese, half Australian. Grew up in Melbourne and then moved across to Perth when I was just before a teenager, so preteen. The reason I mention the half Chinese is that it's a big part of my culture. It's kind of a big part of who I am and the way I was raised. I come from a background of heaps of team sports, played soccer growing up. Not a lot of bat and ball sports, but mostly sort of hand-eye, basketball, football, soccer, martial arts. Played a whole heap of team sports before hitting about 18, when I wanted to sort of stretch into something that was a bit more individual. I started to grow into my body. I was a small kid, which then brought me into the gym. So my partner at the time, she was studying personal training. I was at university doing psychology and getting absolutely nowhere. I was sort of swimming around, trying to keep my head above the water. She pulled me in as a prac student, so she needed to do some exercise stuff with me. I got in there and I fell in love with the gym. So that practical element of actually training, moving my body made so much more sense to me than sitting in a lecture hall and listening to someone tell me about stuff.
Yeah, 100%.
So once I'd done that, I went to TAFE, dropped out of uni, went to TAFE, did the year-long course of personal training there. So got my Cert 3, Cert 4.
Yep.
Then pretty much immediately tore my ACL playing basketball. So finished TAFE, tore my ACL, took a job opportunity down south and moved down south for 6 months, working in a gym there, doing some sort of semi-personal private PT stuff, and really just focusing on rehab. So I dove into what was actually required to fix the ACL. I had the surgery, then went through rehab, did all the sort of strength work, all the plyo stuff, all the proprioceptive things to actually get it working properly so that I could be back at sport.
Yep.
After that, I moved on to other gyms, came back up to Perth, started working in a few other spots, and sort of fell in love with the kind of prehab element of training. It was a big component of how I liked to train, and I moved into bodybuilding from there. So that sort of really specific body part stuff for rehab then spilled into really specific bodybuilding stuff where you're really focusing on certain elements of the body, trying to fix little bits and pieces, which then brought me onto structural balance stuff and hypertrophy, which then brought me into more general pop and making sure that general pop sort of was pretty much bulletproof.
Yeah.
Fixing general problems that pretty much everybody has, lower back stuff, ankles, knees, and getting people moving from pain towards performance.
Did you get what was it trial and error, or just research, or how did you apply that? Because that's kind of around about where I remember meeting you, in that sort of bodybuilding phase of your life. And I just remember this is some yoked Asian dude just looking massive, but then the intellect was, and this is definitely a stereotype of bodybuilders, or, you know, the meatheads kind of look, that it's just you just eat a lot of food and train lots. But they're, and that was probably me back then as well. But after having met yourself, it's there's, you know, shitloads of knowledge, and there's a lot of nuance to bodybuilding. There's a lot of nuance to that.
So much. I suppose a lot of it was trial and error.
Yeah.
I enjoy going into the gym and trying new things. And the way I always saw the body was more of a system, like one thing works and then something else is happening, and then what's happening beyond that and what's happening. So it's all sort of linked.
Yeah.
I found that through the bodybuilding stuff, I was able to really dial in what was linked, what wasn't, what would have an effect on certain movement patterns. And I mean, being a bodybuilder, I was pretty tight throughout. So I sort of found ways to work around that and strengthen other bits and pieces, which at the time, like mobility wasn't a big thing for me.
Yeah.
But I was starting to sort of shape how my programming would look, because I was doing the bodybuilding stuff, testing out stuff I'd seen online, testing out stuff I'd seen in magazines, because we were still in an era of magazines back then.
Muscle and fitness, men's health.
Men's health, yeah, all those things.
Yeah. What age was that? How old were you then, roughly?
20-ish, 21, 22.
Yeah, okay.
So I stuck with bodybuilding for a few years.
So young, yeah.
So young. It's so yoked. Those were the days.
Did you compete? Was the goal to step on stage? Did you achieve that?
Yeah, so I stepped on stage a couple times. I think I placed 5th in one and 3rd in another.
Cool.
I was in the physique category, so we wore the long shorts, which was actually real unfortunate because I had big legs at the time, and I probably should have been stepping up there in those little tighties.
Yeah.
What was the reason for that? I've never really understood. Is it just kind of what you're bringing to the table that they decide where you're at, or is it up to you, or how does that work?
In terms of what category go into, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I think if I'd had an actual coach, they probably would have steered me towards the right direction. But because it was just me doing it, and a lot of the people I was sort of like looking at were more physique shape, that's just kind of where I went towards.
Yeah.
It is a lot to do with body shape, body size, all those sorts of different structures and how they actually look together. And at the time, I was just a big boy. I was just jacked and I had a little waist.
Yeah.
So did you outsource any of your like posing routine stuff? Because I know how important that can be for scoring and your nutrition stuff. Like, what did you outsource and what did you do yourself?
So I did all the programming myself. My girlfriend at the time was studying nutrition. So we sat down and put together a whole nutrition plan, which was really good because I actually got to learn the ins and outs of how that was going to work.
That's cool.
That gave me quite an early sort of view of what nutrition needed to be for this.
Yeah.
Then I had a posing coach who I specifically sought out and went to him because that posing element was completely new to me.
Yeah.
And it is bizarre. It's such a major part of bodybuilding.
Yeah.
Then, well, that was kind of it.
Yeah.
Beyond that, I sort of just reached out to people that had already done it, spoken to them, spoken to their coaches, that sort of thing, and kind of just went for it. I always try to learn these things through experience, and that was one of the reasons I jumped on in the first place.
Yeah, it's a cool sport, and you can take it so far as well. You mentioned that you you did it for 3 or 4 years, or 2 or 3 years. What was the catalyst for getting out of that? Was it opening your eyes to a new, like maybe performance element of fitness, or maybe talk us through that?
To be honest, it's not the healthiest lifestyle. It definitely wasn't back then. I didn't do it the healthiest way. You spend a lot of time training, trying to get big, just eating. The lifestyle that goes with it doesn't really promote relationships with people, a healthy relationship with your own body, if you don't have that mindset from the beginning.
Yeah.
So I came out of it, and I just didn't love what it was doing for me. I felt big, but I didn't feel good.
That's fair. What did you transition to, or like what did you do the two and you're like, cool, I've done this, like what next?
Yeah, so what did I do next? From there, I was playing football at the same time. So AFL. I pretty sure I got injured at that point. I managed to do an AC joint playing footy, which actually really did impact the bodybuilding stuff because right pec and right shoulder, I couldn't move properly. So I had to rehab all of this.
Yeah.
And I couldn't really build size through that side the same way. So that made a large difference. Moving into footy, did AC, then I got to rehab AC. That was a nightmare. That is a pretty gnarly injury.
Shoulders are fucked.
They hurt, hey?
Yeah, man, massively. Hate shoulders.
I got bad shoulders.
Yeah.
Very difficult
Footy
to
and
apply.
shoulders.
Ugh.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So then you got into like the athletic development side of things.
Well, so I rehabbed that. I went back to footy. And then pretty much 6 weeks in, I did my other knee and I'd done PCL, LCL, MCL, and a patella sublux. So that was another whole 6-9 months of rehab stuff. That was non-surgical, which is cool.
That's good.
But that really did open my eyes to a lot of the stuff that was kind of, it's popular at the moment, actually, all that ATG, knees over toes, ankle range sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I coached at Shredded for a while, which was, they were a large affiliate with Charles Poliquin.
Yeah.
So learning under them, I learned a lot of the Poliquin stuff, which is kind of where a lot of this ATG stuff has come from.
Right.
Yeah, he's a huge fan of Poliquin, eh?
Huge.
ATG is what, Athletic Training Group or something like that, and it's run by Ben Patrick, and he does a lot of stuff to do with knee health, ankle health, lower limb mobility and health. For those that are listening, don't know what we're talking about, and he's originally if you haven't looked him up, look him up. Yeah, amazing dude, really amazing dude. But there's a lot of stuff coming out around correct ways to train strength through joints and increase mobility at the same time. Sorry, just to give context to what you're talking about, Jay.
Knees over toes guy on Instagram.
Yeah.
He's really good.
Where was I? Yeah,
so about your knee injuries. And then you're at Shredded.
Yeah. So I went through there. I spent some time at Shredded learning a lot of stuff, which was a lot of that Poliquin sort of based work. A lot of it has, I guess, shaped how I program now, because that was kind of the first strength and conditioning gym I'd actually worked at. And it was really cool to see some actual strength work and some sort of true stuff where they've pulled stuff from Westside, Poliquin, a whole heap of other places, and they used it all really, really effectively, and they got really good results for their clients. From there, my business partner, Belly, and I had been talking about opening a space for ourselves, and we used to party a lot together. So we'd get drunk, we'd talk shit. Am I allowed to swear here?
Yeah, man, go for it.
Yeah.
We'd get drunk, we'd talk shit, and it kind of just was, it was something that was sort of building, and it was something that 10 years ago I'd sort of set my sights on. I'd always wanted to open a facility and have something that was mine and something that I was proud of and something that I had a real say in how it was shaped, so that I felt like I could make a real difference. So we had been talking shit for a while, like I said, and came across an opportunity to buy a whole heap of secondhand gear. So we bought a bunch of rigs, a whole heap of weights, essentially a whole gym, and we didn't have anywhere to put it. So it all moved into my garage, and I worked out of there for about 9 months from my garage gym, which was a really cool experience because I got to wake up and just walk into my space.
Yeah.
And from there, we found a space and moved into what we have now, which is Flow Performance.
Sick, dude. Really cool. I think that, I don't know, just some traits that you have there that are pretty unique and not common, I reckon. Not as common as I'd like them to be in a lot of people, but just around like, well, here's a problem, let me go out and figure out a way to solve it. And, you know, some people now, I'm a big fan of not outsourcing, but like if someone's done a job better than me, or it's done a job that I'm trying to accomplish, let me go and speak to that person first, and then you know, apply that method as opposed to, you know, explore. But obviously you're very aware, and you just have these ways of just getting to the end result a lot quicker, and that's across all aspects of life, whether it comes to looking after machinery and cars and shit, or it comes, you know, to the human body. And I think that's obviously held you in good stead, because I don't know, you've got a pretty amazing little gym there, and the knowledge base that you have when it comes to like shoulder injuries, knee injuries, like all that sort of stuff, it's like, well, I know this works because I've done it. And that, I was talking to someone recently about longevity. Like sometimes it just takes years in a job to get good. Like you can't fast track that through, my methods of like, cool, let me go and find the person who's done it. And then, well, I'll just apply that. It's like, yeah, but there's something about having done it and learnt the lessons and all that you get from that. That just, you can't buy that. It's like a good physique. You can't buy a good physique. You can't buy experience either. So, yeah, we're all the way up to Flow Performance, but now Flow Performance is here. So maybe tell us a little bit about the name Flow Performance. Obviously being in Balcatta, for those of you that are listening in WA, if you do need any sort of gym assistance, I can refer you to at least the number 2 gym in the state, but no conflicts here. So talk us through Flow Performance, the branding and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So we opened, we must be 4 years ago now, 4.5 almost. We opened with the concept of basically crossing a line somewhere between personal training and small group training. So we'd sort of seen a gap in the market where we were both working as personal trainers, and then we'd seen a lot of larger groups, but there wasn't kind of that small group element where where people were getting the focus of personal training, but in a group environment. So we initially went out with a model of, I think it was actually a maximum of 6 or 8 people in a session. And we just pulled all of our PT clients in there. We pushed them all in there. We were like, hey, this is what we do now. Come see it.
Yeah.
And we really I think we started with 2 sessions a day, one in the morning, one in the night. And we just worked. We worked hard to get people in there, show them what we were doing. And what we were doing was really cool. It wasn't really being done here, where you were getting small group, essentially personal training. So we'd program ahead of time. It had a very structured strength and conditioning program, and people were getting individual attention through sessions. So over time that sort of developed. We've got small group strength and conditioning now. It's a bigger model. There is a few more people in the gym now, thankfully. But basically we opened with that concept of creating an affordable option for people to get personalized training, basically.
How do you find that? Sorry, how do you find that that's gone in that time? Because like you say, it was 4.5 years ago, and seems to be the model that most gyms are going down. Like Luke works for one, I work for one. I think there's a lot more franchises in that realm. Not necessarily franchises, but brands. Like either privately owned like yourself or franchises like Revel and that sort of stuff. How do you think, or have you gone with it? And then, what have been some of the hiccups or both sides, hiccups and big wins from it?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the big wins is the results that actually come from it. Yeah. Okay. So the fact that everybody who comes trains effectively. They're not just coming in and spinning their wheels. Like, we know what they're doing. We track everything. They get that individual attention. We have super low injury rates. So we have heaps of people come to us with injuries. We rehab them from pain towards performance. Yeah. The other thing is that they get accountability. So, if you're just a face in a crowd in like a 40-person Les Mills class, not that I'm bagging Les Mills, but if you're a face in 40, you don't get remembered. Like, you'll disappear in the crowd. Yep. And if you don't show up for 4 weeks, they're not going to say anything. Yeah, so we have an element where people come in, they go through a consult, they actually get that individual attention. If they've got issues like range through their ankles, through their knees, through their shoulders, we can address that. Yep. Then they move forward from that. They gain that sort of base level fitness, and then wherever they want to go towards, we kind of bring them to a point where they're able to. Yeah. Okay. Hiccups. Initially, we had smaller classes, and realistically, like, it wasn't a business model that was sustainable. Yep. We had 6 to 8 people in a class, and we only had 2-3 sessions running a day, and we had to feed ourselves. like that was kind of the crux of it. Like, we did need to make money to feed ourselves. Yeah.
Do you think there's space in the industry for a model like that?
I do. I just think that it has to be at a higher price point, and it's going to be that little bit more personal. So it's actually going to have someone that's specifically probably coaching you and dealing with you on a pretty regular basis.
Yeah.
We have that with our coaches. So our coaches touch base with our clients once a month to make sure everything's tracking right. If they're not showing up, they get a phone call. Like, we do have that personal touch.
Yeah.
But I think if you were going to bring it down towards sort of a 4 to 6 model, you need something more there. Like, it needs to almost be individualized.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%.
But yeah, other hiccups other than needing more of it. So we needed more to cover what we were doing. Because if you've got, say, 15 clients, you can feed yourself. But if you put 15 into a gym and all of a sudden you're paying for a lease and you're doing these other bits and pieces, that doesn't work.
Doesn't go as far.
No. So our classes did spread out a little further. I think we moved out to 10 per class, and then we managed to fill out a few more days. And it grew very much by word of mouth in the beginning, which was cool. Then we hired some coaches to teach us through some marketing stuff. Belly has a real similar concept. We're happy to outsource if we don't know something, but if it's something that we can do, we'll learn it as well.
Yeah, big time.
So our growth was pretty organic. I guess if you've got a good product, people will come, right?
Yeah, 100%. So that was like, I seem to remember speaking to both of you. You've maxed out, like, the gym's at full now. You know, the culture in the community. You've got return clients, which is really cool. Some that have gone away, come back. I think that whole, paying to performance model is right in both of your wheelhouses in terms of what you can bring. And you still offer PT as well?
Yes,
we still do the one.
We've got PT.
Yeah. So how does that grow to capacity? How do you define capacity? Do you have a wait list? Like, it's a pretty amazing achievement to kind of, start up your own brand of anything and then just fully, fill it. And from memory, that was kind of mid last year or late last year from memory. If I've got my dates right, I could be wrong on that. But where did your brain go after that? It's like, okay, we're full. Kind of like, now what? Like, yeah, how are you going with that? So there's a few questions in there.
Yeah. How did we get to capacity?
How do you define capacity as well? Like,
how do you define? Okay, so this was actually really tough.
Yeah.
Because we were just rushing head straight into this. Like, we were just doing it and moving forward. We'd kind of initially set a number. We were like, let's just get to, and we set a number of like 60 clients. And we're like, 60, that's capacity. Then we'd get there and we'd be like, this isn't capacity. And we'd set a new number, which was 80. And then we'd do it 100. And then we did 120. And we kept doing that moving forward. At one point, about halfway through that, we did actually sit down and run the numbers on how many people could be in classes, how many people coaches could actually look after effectively before we lost any of the sort of personal touches that were actually there. Because you can only deal with a certain amount of clients, right?
Yeah.
If you've got 300 in here and you've only got 4 coaches, that's a lot of people to deal with individually. So we sat down, we looked at all the numbers, how many people could sit in classes, how many people coaches could actually deal with effectively, how many people were actually coming to sessions. This was another thing, because we've got various membership tiers, and if we've got a bunch of people on a 3 a week and then a bunch that are on a 6 a week, that changed how many people could actually fit in through the week. So we actually worked backwards and we set a number where we were like, this is the number we would like to hit. And then we worked backwards from that number to work out how many people we needed in the gym. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense.
But it was very much a work backwards from the solution.
And then, so what, gym's full, where to now? Like what's the, how did you enjoy that? Like, obviously it's I guess it's kind of different work owner operator, because you kind of like, you don't really have anyone else screaming down your neck to kind of go, cool, we need to do this now, we need to do that now, blah, blah, blah. You kind of work for yourself. So, being 30 odd and being able to kind of switch off, not switch off, sorry, but enjoy that would have been amazing. But Are you content?
At times,
Yeah.
it's real easy to just look at it and be like, cool, I'm happy. Like, that's fine. But no, not really.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons this opened was because we always wanted something more.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really go away once you've reached something. There's no real tangible point where I'm like, this is enough. In this situation, we'd set out to help as many people as we could. And by having either more facility or more space or more people, you're helping more people, right?
Yeah.
So moving forward, we've got concepts in mind where we'll be able to fit a lot more people into the space that we've got.
Yeah.
But that's all under works at the moment, which is exciting. So we are looking forward, trying to work out where the next step is. Yep. But I guess across this last 2 years, we've constantly been doing that. And then COVID's really interrupted that. We had plans to do one thing and then COVID came in, changed that. Another plan, COVID changes that. So we have taken steps towards online programming.
Yeah.
The online world is far less affected by COVID, which is nice.
Yeah, big time.
We've also, I suppose, got personal training and nutrition stuff, which is add-ons to what our members can actually do at the moment.
Yeah.
So moving forward, there's lots to do.
Take it anywhere.
Yeah, pretty much.
So in regards to your service right now, is it like a physio where they come and they get pain-free and then they leave and then you're finding a new client? Or is it you're taking them right through to, like with Tom, for example, you're doing programming for his half marathon. I'm not sure if that'll continue after or like what the plan is for you guys, but is that kind of how the model works for your business? You get them to a point and then it's like, all right, good job, see you later? Or is it an ongoing service of, now you're at performance and you're paying free, let's like capitalize on this and just get you performing really well and continually grow?
Yeah, good question. Basically, we get them from point A to, I wouldn't even call it point B, but to a point where they're pain-free, they're moving, they're essentially happy with where they're at. I suppose if someone wants to move forward and go into performance, then we would then step into an individual programming situation, like what we're doing with Tom, where we could get very specific goals and we would train towards that. What our guys have currently is very much a GPP program. So they've got base strength, base aerobic fitness. They're essentially training ideally 6 times a week and they're as fit as they want to be without moving forward in towards that performance end.
I would say like even, well, they kind of come in for pain, but then they hang around because it's just a good place to be, I guess.
I think community is really a key component of what we actually do. It's like we go out for brunch every Saturday. The people that come, they all know each other. They're all friends. Like I said, a lot of it has come from word of mouth and referrals. So a lot of the people in here are actually just friends. Yeah. They tend to stick around for quite some time. And unless they move on for something very, very specific or they move out of the area, they kind of hang around, yeah.
How long would you say the average shelf life is for a client?
It really depends. If they've come in with injury and we've moved them from injury and they're not looking for anything specific, anywhere between about 9 and 18 months.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say that's like pretty industry standard. Would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so. There is, however, like we have returning clients, they go away, they try other gyms, they come back. So whether that's because they didn't enjoy the community elsewhere or, well, actually, that's what someone said to me this morning. She said, I came back because I hated the other gym.
We won't name that gym.
We won't name that gym.
We won't name that gym.
I missed this.
Yeah.
And it's just a nice feeling that they missed the community and that element of like, I didn't actually go and train there because I didn't like the community. This made them so much more consistent and accountable to themselves because they actually like what they're doing there.
That's the biggest testament to what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like, no better compliment, I think, than a returning client. I think. What were the without naming names? What were the main colors of this other gym? They weren't like red, white, and blue, or orange and black, or something like that.
No, they're another standalone, I think.
Okay. I'm just joking. So what's your training look like now? So Tom mentioned at the start, you're into triathlons now?
Yeah. So
Okay.
I moved from the bodybuilding realm in towards what we did there. Kind of went a bit CrossFitty for a little bit.
Okay.
Then recently moved into triathlons. So it's almost 2 years now. 2 years ago we'd been again shit talking about doing something like an Ironman, and it was sort of just spreading. The people we were shit talking to was getting a little bit further, and one Friday I walked into the gym and one of the members was like, "Oh, I heard you're not going to do a triathlon." So naturally, all right, let's do it. And I think there was about 6 of us that did that first one.
Yeah.
So there's a few coaches and a few members that literally just from Friday shit talking, because our Friday nights we just have open gym. Everybody gets in there. We just throw weights. Literally just stemmed from shit talking, and we went into a half Ironman, which wasn't really what I thought I would go to. I never really considered myself to be an endurance athlete. And I'd always sort of figured that I would do that when I was sort of 40 plus. I hit 30 and went and did a half Ironman. So
Pretty
What are the
classic
distances for that?
age range, I reckon. That 30-year-old Ironman sort of vibe.
Yeah, it seems like that.
You're coming, Luke. It's coming,
That's
Luke.
the common thing.
It's
I got a
coming.
few years, mate. I got this 50. That might this 50K run that might kick my ass into gear. Doing some endurance stuff. Right now, I'm pretty happy just like building to a 1 rep max. Really short efforts.
Power-based athlete.
So how far is a halfer?
What other distances?
it is a 1.9 swim into a 90K cycle into a 21K run.
It's pretty
What was
wild.
the hardest bit out of that, would you say, out of those 3 efforts?
The ride's really long.
Yeah, 90K.
It's not necessarily the hardest. It's
Boring.
just that it's a long time.
Yeah.
Right. How long does that take?
3 hours, anywhere between 2 and 3 hours, or
Man.
2 and 4 hours, depending how fast you ride.
Yeah.
I wasn't a strong swimmer when I started that one, and I swam 3 times a week consistently just to get reasonable at it. The cycling, I'd done a little bit of cycling, so that was okay, but 90Ks is just a fairly long time to sit on a bike.
Yeah.
21Ks running, it's a half marathon. Like, I actually hadn't run further than 12Ks before signing up for that.
Right. So from running 12Ks to how long did you give yourself to train for that?
So I've done 2 now. The first one I think we did an 8-week lead up or a 10-week lead up. It was very short.
Yeah, that's not long.
And that hurt. So
Yeah.
that was basically 4 weeks hard, 1 week off, 4 weeks hard, 1 week off, and then the race.
Man.
So that was pretty gnarly. Learned a lot from that. Decided immediately afterwards, we finished up and I was like, yeah, I'm going to go do another one. I cramped up towards the end of the run on that one, and that was real gnarly. Didn't enjoy that. And it was sort of like a bit of a chip on my shoulder from that cramping.
Yeah.
Set up for December. December did a 16-week prep. So that was a lot longer. That's a fairly long time to sit on a bike and run and cycle, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
But that one went a lot smoother. You know, I'd actually set myself with 3 sessions of each week, building up progressively. That was a much more structured program.
Smarter.
Way smarter.
Were you doing any strength stuff on top of that? So that's 9 sessions. Was that 3 swim, 3 bike, 3 run? Or was that
Some of them were combined. So you've got brick sessions, which is basically like you go for a long ride and then you hop off and you go for a run immediately afterwards.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah, but basically, yeah, there's a solid 9 sessions a week, Plus, in the beginning, I was doing 2 strength. I dropped them out about halfway.
Right.
I wouldn't do that again. I would maintain the 2 strength sessions.
Okay. That's interesting. Do you want to talk us through that? Like, what was the thought process? Why initially did it fall off? And now in hindsight, why would you keep them? Because I know a lot of people, they like dive into these endurance efforts and then they just stop lifting weights for whatever reason. Like, can you talk us through that from a professional standpoint? Yeah, I'm not pointing any fingers. Or
100% do that, and I
maybe the
don't
co-host.
fully regret it, but I will not be doing it in the future. I'll definitely maintain strength training.
Okay, interesting. We can get our maybe the viewpoint from both of you.
Awesome. For me, initially, it was just that I didn't feel good. I was getting in the gym and I was still doing heavy weights, and it was just so much on top of all the other training, which I hadn't really done before. Like 8 weeks of hard endurance stuff when you've really only ever done light endurance work and strength work was just so much load. Then the other component was just that I figured I'd been strength training for like 8 years, 9 years before that 8 weeks wasn't going to hurt me. So 8 weeks completely away from it, I was like, cool, this is fine. However, I did find pretty much within 2 weeks, 3 weeks that bits and pieces of my body were starting to hurt. I was getting like little, not niggles, but things that were just close to a niggle.
100%.
Which is why I would definitely maintain some sort of strength work in my next block.
Yeah.
But I was just trying to go heavy. And then I actually tried to bring it back in, and I did a week of it, and it almost killed me.
Yeah, so that's the biggest, that's the hardest thing, I reckon, is trying to bring it back for sure. Like especially when you're training to a peak. If you're just training for maintenance, different. But if you're training to a peak, it's like, I've thought about a week and a half ago, it's like, maybe I should just go to a strength. I was like, I don't really have time. Like, I'm not going to put my body through that. But basically the same. The reason I stopped is because, again, my favorite excuse, when I come over here, my routine gets thrown and it's hard to get into the gym consistently. However, the style of training, I would just pick up like maybe 2 strength days, and they'd be full body maintenance. Like, that's all it needs to be. Just movement, do a day of push or a day of pull, or just do all 4 styles, upper, lower, push, pull, throughout that time. But yeah, I'd definitely incorporate it next time, 100%. For that, those little niggles and that sort of shit, the body's not a breaking point. But it could be feeling a lot better if I had it maintained.
Do you think that's just from, like, I'm pretty naive in this field, so excuse me if this is a stupid question, but do you think that is that from a sharp increase in volume? Like for you, for example, Jacob, like you're doing your first Ironman or first half Ironman off of an 8-week prep. Do you think that those niggles were creeping in from just like a really sharp volume increase? Because I've heard that is like a really common way to hurt yourself, essentially.
Well, definitely. There's a huge increase in volume of repetitive motion. Like, it's monostructural. You're sitting, like, you're running, right? And you just step after step after step after step. And by dropping out a lot of the strength work, it meant I wasn't doing a lot of my accessory stuff. So I do a lot of calf work. I do a lot of tip work. I do a lot of like little muscle stuff. By dropping all that out, when I actually started just continuously running, the way I see it is, if you've got, like, let's say a slight tilt, like a slight inversion of 1 foot, and you're constantly doing that after 15 Ks every day, that's going to turn so much worse. And it basically took out the prehab. So yes, by taking out prehab and rehab and then putting in heaps of volume and repetitive movement, you're definitely going to find the injuries and the little niggles.
Sure. So talking about this half iron, I really am interested in like the emotional side of things. Like, you're essentially just suffering for, how long did it take? 8 hours? Like, how long is that?
So the first half took just under 6 hours.
Okay.
Second one took just over 5.
Fast.
Way faster. And then I'm set up for December this year, and I'm aiming for a 4:30.
Yeah, right. That is quick, dude.
Yeah, man. But that's still almost 5 hours of just suffering.
So there's a funny thing with it, that the longer you take, the longer you're actually out there. So the longer you suffer.
Right.
So by going a little bit harder and chopping that time down and going a little bit faster, you've got less time actually suffering.
Still 4.5 hours of suffering.
Yeah, man. It's a long time.
It's not so much suffering though, because you've done the train. If you've done the training, you get out there and it's kind of fun. You've got a lot of adrenaline. Like race day is an exciting day. If you've got a few friends out there, you know you're going to see them out there. You're going to pass them when you're cycling, when you're running.
You definitely pass them.
You get to race them. Like, I've always been a little bit competitive, so having mates that are doing it is really helpful. Makes it far less painful.
Yeah.
I suppose one of the other things is if you go into it with a plan and you know your paces, it's far less of a struggle and a hurt than it is just sticking to a plan and doing what you set out to do. I can tell you that the last one didn't quite go to plan. And I got on the bike, went just a little bit faster than I should have. So then when I got off and got into the run, it's just that little bit extra cooked, and then my run paces were all off. And then I had sort of an ego trip where I was trying to make my run paces match what I wanted it to be, which didn't work, which cooked me way earlier than it should have. So
you're just regulating this. Sorry to interrupt. Are you just regulating this as you go, like by feel, or like you know what your running splits should have been, and you know it's hard to track your swimming paces, I'm sure, but you can kind of just feel you're like, oh man, I'm probably just like pushing the envelope a little far here, and I know I'm going to pay for this. Like, is that your thought process, or you're like, nah, I'm sticking to this plan and nothing's going to get in the way of that?
There's a sort of, you've got to have an element of control to it, because it is, like I said, 5 hours. If you cook it at 2 hours, you're done. Like, you're in trouble. So there is sort of an element of you need to hold back and make sure that you're actually hitting your game plan of things that you know you can do. I guess after so much training, like, you get a lot of experience and you kind of work out where your paces are, what certain heart rates feel like. I guess, like swimming, you get a rhythm. I've got a rhythm when I swim, and I know the rhythm. And it's really, really important to not try and race the people around you. I think when you're swimming, especially, like, you can get out of the water and be real toasted just because you swam that little bit too fast. And it took a lot to learn to actually not try and race people and just to swim your own race, run your own race, basically.
Yeah, that's an important takeaway.
Like, in a lot of endurance stuff, it's a mental battle. Like, even just through training, it's just like, cool, I'm out here for 90 minutes, or I'm out here for this time. And you break it up with podcasts, or you break it up with like, oh, what pace am I running this? But oh, it's a bit too quick. Oh, it's a bit too slow. Like, oh, how my heart rate? Oh, that's like, you've got so much to think about that the time kind of goes.
Little games.
Yeah, little games. And I can imagine on a race day, especially with your mates around, just like, where are they at? Where am I at? Okay. Is it worthwhile if I can push this? Probably not. Or maybe it's like, the ego trip that comes in, all that sort of stuff. And like you say, the adrenaline that pops around on race day, you're probably going to, pick up some extra pace from that as well. It's nothing. It's definitely something I didn't think I'd be doing, but it's thoroughly enjoyable for sure.
I think a big part as well is knowing what things feel like, knowing when you're sort of when you're about to cap out your sort of aerobic zones, and you know that anything past this is going to cause you to blow up. Knowing those points is really, really important. So training up to those levels regularly and like spending a lot of time moving at different speeds and different paces is super important to learn how they feel.
So that's a great little segue into tempo run training. And that's something that I haven't really done a lot of, and it's something that I get programmed a lot of, or not a lot of, one a week. But I mention it even to the people that we both know over here, and they're like, yeah, Jacob loves those like 1K on 1K off sort of splits and that sort of stuff. Talk us through, was that well, for context, maybe define what a tempo run is, and then explain kind of your methodology, what around the 1K on and 1K off, because I think it falls in line with exactly what you just said.
Yeah, cool. So for your programming, you're looking at a 21K. So we've got sort of a few elements that are attached to a 21. We're looking at your aerobic, you want to be able to maintain it for that whole, let's just call it 2 hours.
Yeah.
Sub 2.
Better.
You want to be able to maintain your speed across that sub 2 hour time domain. Mm-hmm. So we're looking at, when you've got your tempo runs, we're kind of pushing up towards the top end of your aerobic heart rate, bringing you right up to the top end and kissing that line and flirting with that line of where it's going to blow you up and where it's not. And we're keeping you up there, and we bring you back down to aerobic to recover with active recovery. Mm-hmm. For your tempos of 1K on, 1K off, this was just something I played with when I was doing the Ironman stuff. I found that it was just super, super effective at teaching me where my lactate threshold was, how hard I could push it, and for how long I could push it.
Yeah.
So that pace that you're moving there, you know that if you maintain it for like 3Ks, you're going to blow up.
Yeah.
But you could do it for probably 5Ks.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's the sort of pace that you need towards the end of a race when you've hit everything. You know that the end is in sight and you know where your top end is. So you can move towards that pace. It makes you a bit faster, more competitive towards the end.
So that train harder than you play or whatever. It's like, you're going out there going, cool, I've experienced all these feelings and the exhaustion and all that before, and I haven't necessarily needed to run the 21Ks to feel this, but I still know I've got it in my back pocket.
That's it. And then I guess the other thing is that it brings you up to faster paces. So it gets you actually moving faster for long periods of time. So then when you come into your recovery, and your recovery is the same as your regular cruising pace, all of a sudden everything above that just feels a bit better.
Yeah, I think that's like falls in line. I was listening to a podcast or maybe a month ago now by, is it Chris Henshaw? And he's, for those that don't know him, he's an aerobic programming god. Really knows his shit, and he falls in line with that theory or the application of your active recovery. Like the time that you're spending at rest should be moving. It's not stopping, because then you're diminishing the gap, or you're bridging the gap between your peak and your rest in inverted commas. And it allows you to kind of go, oh, well, my recovery, I can still operate at this heart rate and this pace. I'm feeling pretty good. Like I'm actually running still at 5:30s or whatever. And then when I go flat out, I'm running at 4s, like 4 flats. It's like, oh, now all of a sudden I'm running 2Ks at 9.5 minutes, which is, if you, like just those sorts of little things. Really kind of like, I was very not impressed, but I was just like, oh, this is really cool. And they're probably the most excited I get for a run would be those runs. But afterwards I feel like death, probably the most.
They're fun though, aren't they?
Yeah. they're intense, but they're fun for sure.
I did take parts of that from some of Chris Henshaw's stuff.
Yeah.
So one of his things is running, if you want to run a certain time for a certain time domain, let's call it a 5K. You want to run a sub 25K.
Yep.
But at the moment you're running, say, a 23, to then run the paces that you need to in ever increasing increments. So by sub 20 is a 4K minute.
Yep.
A
4 minute K. 4K minute. Jeez, that's
4K
quick.
Minute. 4 minute K, but you're usually running let's call it a 4:30.
Yep.
By then running, say, a 3:50 or a 4 minute for a K, then active recovery, then again, active recovery, again, active recovery, until you're hitting the same volume.
Yeah.
And making sure that you're actually hitting the same volume at the pace that you're trying to hit, and then extending that out until eventually you just get to that sub 20.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. And I think that's, just all that sort of science behind it, of just being able to just play with something a bit different. Because I think in the past, running programs, maybe this is what I've subscribed to anyway, had just been so formulaic and so linear and just like, cool. So, on Sunday you ran 10Ks last week, you go for 11Ks this week. And on Tuesday you do a shorter pace, a shorter run with a higher pace. And on the Saturday you do, or whatever it is, like they're all the same. You can buy them off, or you can buy them or download them for free. And just having that variation and the science behind it is just so much more engaging to be able to keep consistent with this training.
They are fun sessions though, hey?
Yeah. Luke, if you want to get that 50K pace, if you wanted to be running a sub 4 hour 50K, 1K on, 1K off
for 100Ks
for 100
until I build the volume. So
Perfect.
do you program any recovery rest days, like active recovery?
Yeah, I do. I
Okay.
usually do a lot of it, depending who it's for, but quite often it'll be specifically sort of strength mobility work, a lot
Okay.
of a lot of slower opening work, and a lot of accessories. They're not so fatiguing, but they're just hitting the little bits and pieces. So I usually have a lot of Jefferson curls, kind of bridge work to open out through the front, lots of smaller muscles like your tips, calves, external rotators, whatever you need to hit for specific injuries or specific sports.
What about slower pace runs? Would you
Oh,
ever program those?
them too. Heaps of them.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Have you ever played around with nasal breathing before?
Yes, love it.
Yeah, sweet. Do you want to tell us about that? I've read The Oxygen Advantage by, I think it's Patrick McEwen,
Yep.
and that was really eye opening. Like, there's not many books where I'm like, oh my god, I've been doing something wrong this entire time. But for me, it was that with breathing, something so natural, but a lot of people do it kind of naturally wrong in a way. Like, there's so many mouth breathers. When you're running, it's like you're running at max pace every time, just sucking gas through this big suck hole in the front of your face and not using the little ones, and nitric oxide and all that stuff that you get through breathing through your nose. Like, how often would you program a nasal breathing run? Is it the entire time? Is it just rest efforts? Like, what are your thoughts around it?
Yeah, for sure. Um, I actually use it a lot for people who have never really exercised before or are quite new to sort of endurance work. It's
Nice.
really effective way of keeping people's heart rate low. Like when you sit nasal, you can't really cap out of aerobic work because you can't get rid of the CO2.
Yeah.
So I found it really effective for people that are trying to get a little bit of fitness and have never really done it before and don't really have that experience and the feel and how to know where they're actually sitting with it. Um, a funny one that I actually used to use a lot of was nasal breathing while sleeping. So mouth taping,
Yeah, nice.
which I don't know if you've ever
How's that
played
for a
with it.
visual, everyone?
I don't know if you've played with it, but you tape your mouth and then you're literally forced to breathe through your nose all night. And I found that it had some really, really beneficial effects on like HRV, my resting heart rate, my respiratory rate. All my health markers sort of went in the right direction just from breathing through my nose at night. So I found that doing that for a couple weeks at a time would then actually correlate in towards exercise. And when I'd be running, I'd actually just naturally be breathing through my nose. So I think there's a lot to be said for it because it does have all those benefits to health markers. And then, like you said, it's got that nitric oxide, the vasodilation that comes with it. So it's so good for everything. Also just filters the air, right?
Right. And the goal is to be able to work at your max intensity just through your nose. That's the goal.
Yeah, which you'll never reach sort of outside of aerobic zones through just your nose. So it's really, really good for starting to develop that engine and get you, building the engine that allows you to work for long periods of time.
And also, it's not every run has to be, by the end you're absolutely thrashed and done, and nasal breathing for me is, especially because I could never reach those maximal intensities, it just allowed me to feel like, okay, I've done some work, but I haven't ruined myself for the rest of the day. Like potentially after a strength session, go for a nasal breathing only run, and by the end of that I'm feeling pretty good, rather than if I'm breathing through my mouth and I don't have a plan, I'm just going for a 5k or an 8k or whatever, and I'm just, all right, I feel pretty good, let's push the pace here. I end up just maxing out every single session, and I would never recover enough from that, because you can't just do 5 or 6 or 7 sessions a week just maximal. So for me, not having a plan and not maybe being able to auto-regulate myself, because I'm just like looking at my Strava like, okay, I'm not running a sub 5-minute K here, I got to really push it. It just allowed me to pull back a touch, and I think that just like really facilitated my recovery.
Yeah, I suppose it's a really good way to self-regulate, right?
Yeah,
And
I'd recommend it for
especially,
everyone.
I would too, especially if you've got that personality that needs to push it every time.
Yeah, I'm hopeless for that. Have you done any song?
Nasal breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done heaps, but not in this training block. But I used to do quite a bit. Actually, we used to Jacob program for me last year before for some stuff as well, and I think we did a bit through there. Yeah, no, I've done it with clients and that sort of stuff. Pretty much the same stuff, the same opinion on it in regarding to like that regulation that you have on an individual, especially for people that aren't confident. I use it as a confidence thing for aerobic because then they gas themselves out. So then it's like, cool, it's uniform across the board. Everyone just shut your mouths. Also helps for a bit of peace and quiet with clients. But they are awkward sessions. I actually think I did one at Flow and it was just like the quietest session because not like you just like everyone's just trying to get the, suck them in through the nose. No one's talking.
Everyone's snotting everywhere.
Yeah,
Disgusting.
literally. But yeah, no, I'm a big fan. I think they're really good for, like you said, Jay, the newbies and just get people to operate at kind of the same level. It's another way to use kind of like instead of RPE or whatever it is. It's like, yep, everyone nasal breathing this one, and people can choose almost choose your adventure. It's like, I can push and try and really grow my diaphragm and get the strength out of that, or you can go, cool, I want to keep this at a comfortable pace through nasal breathing as you get to learn more and more about it.
It's actually I found it super beneficial for people who deal with anxiety.
Yeah,
it's
a
good way
true.
to teach them to actually breathe and to kind of deal with the situation of that breathing, because often there's breathing issues, right? And actually deal with the anxiety of not being able to breathe while knowing that you can just open your mouth and breathe.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Having a bit more control.
That's it. And putting yourself in a situation which feels uncomfortable but really has no danger.
Yeah. Now, I know we don't have too much more time, so I just wanted to maybe wrap with one question. And I do appreciate your time today. You mentioned it before, your initial goal was to do an Ironman.
Yep.
And you've done 2 halves.
Yeah, so that's technically one full.
I'm going to claim I've done a marathon once I've done 2 halves. Is that still on the cards? Do you have a timeline for that? Because I actually don't know this.
It is still on the cards. My next one's another half.
Yep.
I kind of set myself, I needed to hit the half in a 4:30 because I don't want to spend more than 9.5, 10 hours out there doing a full.
Yeah.
Fair.
I want to do it in like a time that in my head is a respectable time.
Yeah. Not just do it and go, cool, I've got 24 hours to do this. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, I want to actually do it and maybe not be competitive, but be competitive with myself.
Yeah, sick. Do you have a timeline for that? Do you know when that might be? Or just you want to do your half in 4.5 and go from there?
I'm going to go half in 4.5, which I'm planning on doing in December. So then next year for the full, I would like to go elsewhere and do it. Go sick. Travel. Yeah, go somewhere Hawaii. Picturesque. Hawaii, yeah. Just go to the hard ones.
Yeah.
Maybe Utah.
Yeah. Just with no air. No, that's good, dude. That's good. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that and how you go with this 4.5 hour one in December. If I'm back in town, I'll be down there, not competing, but on the sidelines holding some beer farm frothies for you.
Perfect.
Appreciate your time today. Do you want to maybe give your socials and Flow's socials a bit of a shout out, and we'll tag them in the notes as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think mine's all at Jacob Cheah, so JACOBCHEAH, and Flow Performance is at flowperformance_. Perfect.
Amazing. Well, thanks, dude. Looking forward to maybe getting you back on in maybe just as you get into prep for the.
If you get me during the prep would be good.
Yeah, during the prep, not right at the end.
Like midway through. Before I've cooked myself.
Yeah, no, we definitely will. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks again. And if you do enjoy this episode, guys, be sure to share it with at least one of your friends.
Amazing. Thanks, Jacob.